This right here is my library's receipt that I get every time I check something out. You'll notice at the bottom, it says how much money I saved this year just from using the library instead of buying things. That number is $1,283.23, which is a shockingly high number and just goes to show how valuable of a resource the library actually is. I use my library to check out books and ebooks and movies and all sort of things. And even as a third place, somewhere away from home or work, somewhere that I can just be out of the house that doesn't involve me spending money. But more than just the benefit of taking out free stuff, the library is one of the last safe havens for physical media. I'm gonna paint you a pretty grim picture of the future of physical media, but also show you how libraries are working to preserve it so that we can be intentional with all the media that we consume. If you take away anything from this video, it would be this. Preserving media just isn't profitable. It costs money, time, and space in order to do it. So why would a corporation, a streaming service, spend billions of dollars to license a show when they can just spend money to produce something of their own and keep churning it out? Whenever I make a video about streaming services or subscriptions, I always get like, oh, well, on physical media, you often don't get the new shows that are coming out. But the thing is, the new shows suck, and it isn't just an old man screams at clouds thing. These new shows are literally designed to be watched and forgotten. The goal of a streaming service isn't to be a catalog, a portfolio of content. It's to keep you subscribed for just a couple months longer in anticipation to the new show. The new show comes out, you binge it in a weekend, and then, oh wait, 2 months later, there's a new show coming out. They've transitioned from being the all-you-can-eat buffet, a catalog business model, to a hype-based business model where they just keep you just a couple months more. If you don't believe me, just look how quickly Netflix cancels shows. They'll put out something vaguely interesting and not invest anything to start it up because they know the viewer base from season 1 to season 2 is going to drop. So why invest in season 2 if that's not going to keep people around to subscribe? Why not just come out with something new? We have seen this before. 100 years ago, something eerily similar happened, and that was well before media was consumed at home. And let me tell you, the consequences were devastating. In the 1920s, when films started introducing the idea of sound, the talkies came out. The studios were sitting on a couple decades worth of silent movies that were no longer useful to them. Silent films in the era of talkies weren't commercially viable. So what did? They disposed of them. Over 75% of silent films that birthed cinema have been destroyed or erased by history. Now, there are communities online that are built to try to find this lost media, but every time there's a breakthrough, we realize how nearly impossible it is to recover this stuff. And this didn't just happen to forgettable silent films. Even directors like Alfred Hitchcock's have their early discography just erased completely. And back then, 100 years ago, films weren't viewed as something worth preserving. I know, it's crazy, but they were treated more like a stage play. You experience it, and then they toss it, and then they make a new one. And that concept seems hard to believe until you flash forward to what we're dealing with today, and it sounds like we're repeating history. We are relying on streamers to preserve history, and they're not gonna do that. It's not what their responsibility is. We just assume that Tom Hanks movies will be around 100 years from now for the next generations to consume. They're popular movies. But what streaming services are out there that are even carrying Tom Hanks movies? Maybe you'll see Forrest Gump somewhere, but what about the other dozens and dozens of his movies? What are we doing today to make sure that the next generation can watch the movies that we know and love? We don't own our media anymore, and we're relying on these streaming services to act as a time capsule, when really what they're doing is they're locking the old things in a vault so that we can no longer access them in favor of creating something new that we get hyped to wait and anticipate and watch and then forget about. Now, there's a place that's immune to all of this. The markability of content isn't a consideration, and thinking about next quarter's profits isn't how they make decisions today. And what that is the public library system. Their mission is to preserve stories, art, and knowledge for future generations, regardless of what those stories might be. They're here to make sure that the obscure and the culturally significant are never forgotten. My library has an extensive foreign film section. They'll have movies that you've never heard of from around the world that wouldn't make it to shelves or streaming services in America because it's just simply not feasible or economical to do so. But my library has it. But if I wanted to learn about foreign cultures and experience the great filmmakers from around the world that I would have never been exposed to, I can do that at my library. And on the flip side, the library is a great place to discover local culture. My library has extensive catalogs about things and information within and about my state. It makes an effort to recognize where I live specifically is a cultural hub, and it celebrates it. The library's main mission is to democratize access. I remember getting a comment on a past library video, and it blew my mind. It went something like, if the library didn't exist and the idea of the library was proposed today, it would be seen as communism. God, I mean, it's a government program that is deliberately inefficient by design. It's supposed to be, and everyone can access it. It's a gift to our community, and that's what makes it so wonderful, and we have to preserve it. There are people out there that are actively looking to reduce funding or reduce access to libraries. The best way that I found to support the library is simply by using it. Sheer numbers shows evidence that the library is important to us. And I encourage you, if you don't use yours, sign up for a library card. It's free. You're paying with it through your taxes. It's a community effort to fund and leverage. Sign out media of all kinds. They have digital services. They have physical media. They have events. And my library even has media sales. I go there and I spend $10 and I come out with like 40 different movies to build my own library at home. In preparation for this video, I asked a community of librarians online what we can do to better support the library, and I found something actually really interesting. Now, this doesn't apply to every library. This is potentially. They suggested when you look at a book from the shelf and you want to read through it and skim it, don't put it back on the shelf where you found it. Put it on a table or back in an area where books go to be reshelved. You do this so that the librarians can scan that book and mark it as in-house use to show evidence that people are actually browsing the catalog within the library in person. Now, not every library does this, and if you want to help support your library and it's a small one and it doesn't have this, what you can do is after you're done with the book, you can sign out that book and then immediately sign it back in. You can put it back in the book drop-off slot. It might seem like a small thing, but just that little action, that little tangible, trackable action helps support libraries. Now, I constantly find myself being at the library and looking at movies and books that I've never heard of. And one of the interesting things that dawned on me is the idea that I can go from discovery to consumption so quickly in a way that you can't even do digitally. Like if somebody suggests a movie to watch, you'll take mental notes of it and then forget to ever watch it, or it's gonna take a while. There's gonna be a lag time. But when you're at the library and you could discover something for the first time, you could immediately take it home to watch. And the physical latency between discovering it and consuming it is zero. Is a real novel and intentional way to consume media. Like I picked up this movie, The Odd Couple, which I've heard about, but I don't know anything about. There's no impressions left on me on what I think this movie's going to be. I just know it's a classic and I was like, ooh, I'm gonna pick it up and I'm not gonna read anything about it. And I'm actually gonna be watching it on this right here. Hang on, I gotta open it. Yo, check this out. If you guys seen my other videos, you guys know that I don't have a TV in my house. I only use projectors. I have one Orzen projector in my living room, and because they're a friend of this channel, they sent me this Orzen Zip, which is a foldable, transportable, Bluetooth-enabled wireless projector that comes with a wall mounting magnet and wireless HDMI, which I never even heard of. Now, like every other Orzen product, this has instant autofocus. I could even make it sideways and I could do vertical video. This projector sits in my palm. Oh my gosh, that is so freaking Gnarly. That is so cool. I'm gonna put a link to this down below if you wanna check it out, and you could see Orzin's entire lineup of projectors. So I'm gonna be watching the DVD on this. I'm gonna put the disc into my laptop. I'm gonna put the wireless HDMI into my laptop. It's gonna connect to this, and I'm gonna project it on the wall behind me. I can take this to the library and use this as a second monitor. Man, I love going to the library. If you wanna see another video about the library, click right here. Cheers, guys.